white folks, the Luo people, and also the non-Luo, those who are interested in learning about Luo. As we said, now we're getting real on the issue of the Luo. We want to talk about Luo migration, and it just cannot get better than the way we're going to starting. Right now, we are into Joluo, or the Luo of Kenya, those who are around Lake Victoria. It is complicated to trace the Luo migration, but through oral histories, we are able to read many scholars and many researchers and derive into it, despite its difficulty. Many of the people have got stuck in their hand for the Luo or Joluo migration history. However, the story of the Joluo tribe is very interesting. Since they originated from South Sudan, they are called the Nilotic people. As I told you earlier on, the history is a bit difficult to handle since it was brought down by generation to generation orally. But the story goes that there was a massive exodus by a large group of people from South Sudan in the 15th century during the Muslim conquest of Sudan. A greater leader called Nyikango is said to have led his people called the Shelo or the Sholo along the Nile after arguing with his brother. This tribe flourished and continued to wander along the Nile of the River Nile, along the banks of the River Nile. They would break apart due to lack of food or fueling, and thus continue to spread apart into Central and also Eastern Africa. It is estimated that the Luo, who call themselves Joluo or the Jaluo, who are the people of the Luo, were led into Kenya by a chief called Ramogi Ajwang about 500 years ago. They immediately found Lake Victoria, which they called Nam Ulwe. Nam Ulwe means endless lake. When they arrived, it seemed like the water went on forever. There was no end, according to the Joluo who earlier arrived around Lake Victoria. The Joluo settled at Lake Victoria and became fishermen, which they are said to be in today. Since the arrival of Joluo in Kenya over half a century ago, they have become one of the most influential groups in Kenya, and they're said to be the fourth largest ethnic group in Kenya. Traditionally, the Luo or the Joluo were organized into exogamous clans consisting of several families headed by a clan leader. This tradition is still being followed up to date. As soon as you meet a Luo person, the first thing they will ask your wife, who is your father? Then the next thing also Joluo will say is, who is your mother? This will continue until each party knows whether they are related or not. Once the relationship between a Joluo is established, any other business can now be conducted without any problem. This is an excellent way to keep the genetic or the gene pool clean. The Council of Elder is one that arms supreme rule or chief known as Ruoth. This group played a key role of advisors to the elders, which is unlike in the House of Parliament or UK Congress. This tradition is still very strong in the Joluo land up to date. Whenever there is a wedding or funeral, the elders are called to make a plan for the event. They are especially involved in the dowry of a woman before she gets married. The dowries are still paid in cows today. The language of Joluo is called Joluo, which is part of the Nilotic language group. The word Nilotic means relating to the Nile River or River Nile. It is interesting to see that they are distinctively different from the Bantu or Cushitic languages. It seems there were at least 3 different groups which migrated to Chope, East Africa. The Nilotic tribes include the Kalenjin, Maasai, Dinka, and the Luo, which is Joluo, to name just a few. The language is very different from Cushitic and Bantu languages, but the Joluo have also married or accumulated a lot of languages from Bantu into the dictionary of the Luo. And this is where we get deeper. Major group of the Luo migration were the amorphous clusters called the Owiny and Molo. The tradition of the Owiny group indicated a strong association with the people of northwestern Uganda and the northern margins of Banyoro, dominated by agricultural communities. From northern Uganda, the Luo ancestors traveled along the western side of along the western flanks of Mount Elgon, passed through Mbele and Tororo, and eventually settled in Basoga for some generations before they arrived in western Kenya. After moving across Samia, where some of them remained, they finally settled in Alego. These were the ancestors of Kadimo, Kowil, Wanyendra in Yimbo, Kogelo, Korwoth, Karapul, Kanyabol, and Agoro, found in Alego, the Kanyakwa in Kisumu, and the Kamot and Konya in Kano today. This can be referenced in Ocheng's writing in 1974b, page 26 to 7. Page 7 to 26, I mean. The Owiny moved from Bagungu and settled temporarily in Budama before finally settling in Sigoma, Alego, in Nyanza, region of western Kenya. Between 1540 and 1600, the Omolo group settled at Ibanda for 3 generations before moving to western Kenya. Sections of the Omolo were left in Iteso. You see, that's why when we start talking about the assimilation of Luo, of other Luo tribes, we are going to talk about it in other videos. We need to admit that there are Luo tribes which are already existing, like Kumam and Lao. We will talk about it in another video, which other people are not accepting, but it is the fact. So sections of the Omolo were left in Iteso and also among the Padola of Uganda. This can be referenced in Ogot, Publicity of Ogot, of 2009, page 649. If you can buy it on Google Scholar, you will get it. The Omolo group seems to have come from a distinctively different background from the Owiny group. They had strikingly different attitude towards land, social development, leadership, power, and cattle. They also came much later. The Omolo group appeared to have come much later from the Alur group and settled in Nyanza before AD 1600. From Pawiri or the Chope in northern Banyoro, Kitara. Mark this one very well. From Pawiri or the Chope in northern Banyoro, Kitara, they came to Ibanda in Bokoli County of Basoga and settled for some time before they moved to Samia and Bukedi. Have you seen this? Bukedi area, Luo is there. We're going to find all this out. Because I've seen a lot of opposition in the comments when we talk about assimilation. There are a lot of people who oppose it, but we cannot deny our people. They are our people. We will talk about it, and we need that unity. For the unity to prevail, we need to get back to history, see where we have done wrong, and apologize, and we move ahead. We forget about what is bad. We look at all the good things, because unity is all we need. That's the purpose of the Luo Online. So now, from Samia, they moved to Yimbo and finally to West Alego. From about 1700 to the second half of the 19th century, part of the Komolo group lived in mud wall villages, villages built with mud walls, looking after cattle and practicing a limited form of agriculture. The source is Ogot of 2009, page 518. This marked the beginning of sedentary life and change from a largely pastoral life to mixed farming with increased emphasis on agriculture. It is here where the Joluo developed their identity economically. Due to the pressure exerted on them by other incoming Luo groups, some of the Jok Omolo moved to the area now called Game in Sia Country. They moved to the area called Game in Sia County after pressure from other Luo groups. So they went to area known as Game in Sia County. There's also a Palabek game in northern Uganda in Kitgum district. So you can see, you feel that Luo love if you hear Game in Sia County in Kenya, and you also hear Palabek game in northern Uganda. then you feel the sense of they are your brothers and sisters somewhere, here or there. Others drifted southward to Yoma. When the area became crowded, some of them drifted to the west and crossed the lake and settled in South Nyanza. Also reference to God 2009, page 8 to 27. The Omolo group was composed primarily of the Jok Adet or the game. Then also they were having Jok Nyada, the name. Then there was also Jok Ochia, South Nyanza, and also Jo Unami or the Samia. They were all among the Omolo group. Don't say Jok Makturu, there's no Jok Makturu. Mark those ones. I repeat that the Jomulu were composed of Jogadet, also known as the game. Then there was the Jok Nyada, Jok Ochia, also known as South Nyanza, and lastly the Joonami, who are the Samia. The details of the expansion and settlement are adequately captured by Ogot in 2009. Ogot stated that the story of Luo settlement was not a united, planned, and executed consciously and deliberately. It was not. The whole operation was diversified, irregular, and not organized. Each group acted independently against each other. That is disorganized way. So we the Luo, we need to unite. Our ancestors have been disunited and disorganized. The process of the occupation was also slow. The Luo did not destroy their Bantu neighbors, or the Joluo did not destroy their Bantu neighbors completely, but either drove them out, or subjugated them, or absorbed them. See? But it was not destroyed completely. Mark that point. So if you're a Bantu and your ancestors were lying to you about this, that the Joluo tried to destroy, no, it was never part of the mission of the Joluo. The Joluo population expanded rapidly, leading to a further migration, encounters, and assimilation. When the people arrived in Western Kenya, their initial settlements were Ligala, were normally fortified. These are what Cohen and Atieno Odiambo of 1989 in page 14 refer to as Gondabo, as the population of the initial settlement expanded. It became necessary for the children of Gunda to establish Dala. Dala means the homestay outside in the Gondabo. Dala expanding local community was referred to as Gweng, or the locality, that is according to Joluo, which did not primarily comprise of the agnatic kinsmen, but was largely based on the formation of alliance developed for strategic regions. Several Gwenge was a means of avoiding lack of isolations because of survival in the hostile world of the 17th and 18th centuries, depended on securing support and labor through incorporation and creation of alliance. Distant contacts were also necessary. For example, Luo-Samia links. Joluo made links with the Samia. The alliance enhanced the reception of the migrants into new areas. Alliances were important because the Luo did not migrate into empty areas. They found people of Bantu origin already settled. These Bantu speakers were good farmers and led a sedentary life. They cultivated grains, rice, and bananas. They used iron ores, spears, and used pottery system for cooking bananas. They had large herds of cattle, goats, and sheep, but they laid more emphasis on their crops than their animals before the arrival of the Luo. Before the arrival of the Luo, the Bantu speakers had major settlements in Yimbo and Samia. This is according to a chain of 1979, page 2 to 3. Ogot states very clearly in 1967 that the initial entry of the Joluo was peaceful, and they settled in the areas adjacent and mostly suitable for farmers in the area. As more waves arrived, the Luos were forced to be more aggressive, given that the original settlers hated to lose their land. The Bantu groups were forced to abandon the lake shores. Sorry for our brothers of Bantu. And the plains they were also forced to abandon and moved to the higher and safer ones due to the Joluo invasion. For example, the Gusi. The Bantu moved north and south in search of better sites. In most cases, the Bantu people who opted for peaceful methods were coexisted and also assimilated to become Luo. They became Luo because there was no trace of their languages and culture. The numerous clashes between the Luo and Bantu did not interfere between cultural and intermarriages among themselves. The Luo languages prevailed and became the languages absorbed. However, by 1900, a dominant culture and language, the Luo, had evolved among themselves. People living in the area. The Luo movement seemed fascinating because of the style of the movement. The Luo could begin with a single group, then a neighboring group, and the whole band would come in to occupy the area occupied by Bantu and the Cushitic people. Through research into the myth and legends of the Luo people, Ogot again in 1967 was able to trace back the roots of migration using the approximation of generations. It is likely that the climate and ecology of the routes they followed influenced the actual lines of movement. In the same way, the action of the Bantu and the Kushite also influenced the migration of the Luo people, the movement of the route that they chose. The Luo migration had political, social, and economic ramifications in the areas which they moved into. Their migration helped to shape the modern society by absorption of some groups. Their migratory patterns led to population growth in East Africa region and possibly also led to the disintegration of some societies. Interclan struggles over land resulted into the emergence of securing final settlement in Nyanza province, present-day Sia, Kisumu, Homa Bay, and Migori counties. Greetings to the guys in the western Nyanza province. That's where we are now. The migration might have led to the introduced new crops like sorghum, groundnuts, and simsim as products of an economic growth, and in some eastern parts of Uganda were also introduced to nomadic pastoralism. Their movement also bred new customs, language, and cultural patterns. The invaded people were either absorbed or fled. The invasion of the Joluo was the probable cause of insecurity in the areas they passed or occupied, and there might have been great death tolls. As outcomes, the wars fought by the Luo and other groups. Their interactions with these communities contributed to change. By the 18th century, the Luo had spread into most of Central and South Nyanza. The Luo were intruders and had to fight to occupy. By 1850, the settlement of the people in the central Nyanza was almost complete. The different clans had formed their economic organization and developed normative system, political constitution, mechanisms, and agencies had derived requirements, which affected all societies alike. This was by Malinowski, as quoted in Anderson, 1970, page 10. So, in the map at the end are the areas that are currently occupied by the ethnic group of the Eastern Luo of Lake Victoria, who are the Joluo of Kenya. Thank you if you have been with me to the end. Bye-bye.